For decades, the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID, has masqueraded as a humanitarian force, claiming to fight poverty, assist developing nations, and foster democracy. But behind the noble mission statements lies a web of deception, fraud, and corruption. From funneling taxpayer dollars to terrorist organizations, covering up human trafficking rings, and wasting billions on fake projects, USAID has never been about aid. It's been about power, influence, and hidden agendas. This is the shocking and hidden truth about how USAID betrayed the American people while fueling crime and corruption worldwide. The first and perhaps most horrifying scandal involved Caritas Centrafrique, a USAID-funded charity in the Central African Republic. On the surface, it appeared to be an innocent non-profit, providing food and medical care to orphans. But CNN exposed a sinister reality. The organization was run by Luc Delft, a convicted child molester from Belgium. USAID continued funding this organization even after Delft was sent back to Belgium, where he was convicted of possessing child pornography. Investigators found that USAID ignored warnings from whistleblowers about ongoing abuse within the program. Instead of cutting funding, they dismissed the evidence as unreliable, allowing children to remain vulnerable in a program run by a predator. In one of the largest fraud cases in USAID history, the Global Health Supply Chain Program was touted as a game changer for healthcare in poor countries. The plan was simple. USAID would invest $9.5 billion to improve the medical supply chain, making it easier for developing nations to receive critical supplies. However, reality painted a different picture. Only 7% of shipments were completed on time in the program's first 3 years. Internal investigations found that procurement analysts were fabricating data, and the main contractor, Chemonics, routinely submitted fake reports to justify additional funding. Despite this, USAID extended the contract by another $2 billion even after it was clear the program was failing. Eventually, the Justice Department stepped in, forcing Chemonics to pay a $3.1 million settlement for fraud. During the height of the pandemic, USAID publicly denied any connection to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Yet financial records showed millions of dollars flowing from USAID to EcoHealth Alliance, the same organization that funneled funds to Wuhan for coronavirus research. An investigation revealed that USAID had been involved in virus research for years under the PREDICT program, which was supposed to forecast pandemics. Yet the very program tasked with identifying threats failed to prevent the COVID-19 outbreak. Serious concerns about what exactly USAID was funding behind closed doors. One of the most shocking revelations involved USAID's failure to protect human trafficking victims. The agency sponsored programs that were supposed to provide safe houses and legal assistance to trafficking survivors. However, investigations revealed that USAID funding was either mismanaged or cut altogether, leaving victims stranded. In Tanzania, at least 200 trafficking victims were identified but had nowhere to go after USAID funding dried up. In Cambodia and Myanmar, funding cuts shut down shelters that protected women and children forced into online scam labor and prostitution rings. Even worse, USAID-funded programs in some regions were found to unknowingly support traffickers, with some victims being recycled into abusive systems due to poor oversight. While the United States government claimed it was fighting terrorism, the shocking truth, how USAID funded terrorist organizations and helped arm America's enemies. The United States Agency for International Development, USAID, has long portrayed itself as a humanitarian force. But recent investigations have revealed that it has been secretly funneling billions of dollars to terrorist organizations. This money, which was meant for foreign aid and development, has instead ended up funding extremist groups that target Americans and U.S. allies. Here's how USAID was directly responsible for arming terrorists and funding their operations. USAID's role in funding Hamas and Palestinian terrorism. One of the most damning revelations about USAID is its direct financial support for Hamas, a designated terrorist organization. Before and after the October 7, 2023 Hamas attack on Israel, USAID secretly funneled hundreds of millions of dollars into Hamas-controlled entities in Gaza. A report found that USAID awarded $9 million to Mercy Corps, which worked with the Hamas-controlled Ministry of Social Development to distribute funds. This money was used to sustain Hamas's operations, including attacks on Israel. USAID provided over $2.1 billion in funding to Gaza and the West Bank since Hamas came to power, despite clear evidence that Hamas steals foreign aid for military purposes. A separate USAID-funded educational and community center in Gaza was found to be operated by a local organization with direct ties to Hamas, which openly praised terrorist attacks against Israel. USAID's financing of Boko Haram, ISIS, and Al-Qaeda. Another devastating scandal involves USAID's funding of radical Islamist groups in Africa and the Middle East, including Boko Haram, ISIS, and Al-Qaeda. USAID's billions in secret transfers to terrorist states. Perhaps even more shocking is that USAID sent over $18 billion to nations and groups tied to Islamic terrorism. This includes $917 million sent to Gaza in 2024 alone, knowing that Hamas controlled all aspects of aid distribution. How this money was used to buy weapons to kill Americans. Investigations have revealed that much of this funding did not go toward humanitarian relief, as USAID claimed. Instead, it was used to purchase weapons, fund terrorist training camps, and strengthen anti-American forces. Hamas used USAID money to buy rockets, guns, and materials to build tunnels for smuggling weapons into Israel. In Afghanistan, USAID funds were redirected to buy ammunition and military vehicles for the Taliban, which were later used against U.S. allies. ISIS and Boko Haram operatives used USAID cash to purchase firearms, explosives, and logistical support for terrorist attacks. The cover-up: how USAID lied to the American people. Despite overwhelming evidence, USAID officials repeatedly denied that taxpayer money was funding terrorists. However, internal documents revealed that USAID knew their aid was going to terrorist groups, but exempted themselves from anti-terrorism laws to continue funding them. Whistleblowers and watchdog organizations discovered that USAID hid the names of subawardees to avoid scrutiny, making it nearly impossible to track where the money actually went. Some USAID officials actively fought against pro-Israel policies and even lobbied the State Department to cut U.S. military aid to Israel while increasing aid to Hamas. USAID is a national security threat. The evidence is overwhelming. USAID has been systematically funding America's enemies while deceiving the public. Money that was meant for humanitarian relief ended up in the hands of those who seek to destroy America and its allies. With billions of taxpayer dollars being funneled to terrorist groups, it is clear that USAID is not an aid organization. It is a threat to all America. The evidence is overwhelming. USAID has been systematically funding America's enemies while deceiving the public. Money that was meant for humanitarian relief ended up in the hands of those who seek to destroy America and its allies. With billions of taxpayer dollars being funneled to terrorist groups, it is clear that USAID is not an aid organization. It is a national security threat. It's time to demand real accountability for the criminal actions of USAID. USAID repeatedly lied in official reports to Congress and the public. Investigations uncovered falsified program records, conflicts of interest, and bribery scandals in Africa and Asia. A 2025 internal audit found that USAID employees intentionally misrepresented data to make projects appear more successful than they actually were. Some officials narrowed the scope of internal investigations to avoid uncovering additional fraud. Meanwhile, whistleblowers who attempted to expose the truth faced retaliation or were silenced through bureaucratic loopholes. With billions wasted, lives destroyed, and terrorism funded, the shocking truth about USAID can no longer be hidden. Investigations by independent watchdogs, whistleblowers, and even the United States government have exposed a corrupt, unaccountable agency that must be dismantled. USAID was never about humanitarian work. It was a front for deception, control, and hidden political agendas. The real question now is how many more lies remain undiscovered, and how long before the American people demand real accountability. If this outrages you, share this video. Let the world see the truth behind USAID's corruption. Comment below Should USAID be shut down? What do you think should happen next? Subscribe for more truth. This is only the beginning. May God bless America. Thank you for watching.